They say every school has its secrets, but these three never forgot theirs. What you're about to hear isn't fiction. These are true incidents that happened inside real classrooms. And to this day, no one can explain what really went wrong. The locked classroom that the bell had rung 15 minutes ago, yet the echo still seemed to drift down the deserted hallways of St. Mary's High. The janitor, old Mr. Lewis, pushed his mop bucket along the corridor, humming softly to fight the silence. Every Friday night, he stayed late to lock up the school, and every Friday night, he avoided the last door on the second floor. Room 3B, the locked classroom. Students whispered about it all the time. A girl who died there years ago, a light that turned on by itself, voices that called your name when you passed by. Mr. Lewis laughed off those stories when the teachers were around, but when he was alone in that building, with only the creak of the floorboards and the faint ticking of the wall clocks, he wasn't so sure. He didn't like to look at the door. It was sealed shut with a rusted padlock, and the glass window had been covered with old newspaper. The sign above it had faded, Mrs. Harding's class. She'd been a beloved teacher once, before she vanished during a fire drill in 1998. They said she'd gone back inside to rescue a student and never came out. After that, the school kept the room locked out of respect or fear. Tonight, though, something was different. As Mr. Lewis passed the door, the smell of chalk dust and burnt wood filled the air. He froze. There was no reason that room should smell like anything. It had been untouched for over 2 decades. Then he heard it. A faint sound of chalk scraping against a blackboard. He blinked hard, staring at the sealed door. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. The rhythm was unmistakable. Someone was writing. Slowly, carefully. His heart began to pound. He should have left, should have walked away, but something made him reach for his keys instead. His hand trembled as he slid the keyring out of his belt and squinted at the old brass labels. None of them matched 3B. He didn't even know if a key for that door existed anymore. Then, all at once, the scraping stopped. The silence was heavier now, like the air had thickened. Mr. Lewis took a slow step closer, his reflection faintly visible in the cracked windowpane. And that's when he saw it, faint, but clear enough to make his stomach twist. Words were being written on the inside of the glass in white chalk. You forgot her. He dropped his keys. The hallway lights flickered, and a soft, shaky breath came from inside the classroom. A woman's voice whispering, "Help me, please." He backed away, heart hammering, eyes wide. The sound of footsteps moved toward the door from the other side, slow, dragging, uneven. Then came the metallic click of the padlock, twisting from inside. Mr. Lewis ran. His mop crashed to the floor, and water spread across the tiles like a spreading shadow. He reached the stairwell before forcing himself to stop. Maybe it was his imagination, maybe he was just tired, but deep down he knew it wasn't. The sound of the padlock unlatching had been real. The next morning, when the principal arrived, she found the janitor asleep in his car outside, pale as chalk. He refused to go back inside, muttering about voices in the locked room. Curious, she took a spare set of master keys and went up to the second floor alone. When she reached 3B, she froze. The padlock was gone. The door was slightly open. Inside, the air was cold, unnaturally cold, like the windows had been left open on a winter night. Dust covered everything except for one clean patch on the blackboard. Written there, in fresh white chalk, were the same words Mr. Lewis had seen. You forgot her. The principal felt her chest tighten. She'd been a student at this very school when Mrs. Harding disappeared. Her best friend, Emily, had been in that class, the same girl who vanished during the drill. The police never found her. The blackboard trembled slightly as if touched by an unseen hand, and one more sentence appeared beneath the first. She's still waiting. The principal dropped the keys and stumbled backward. A soft sob echoed from the corner of the room. She turned toward it, nothing. Just a tipped-over desk and an old, rotted uniform hanging from a hook. But the air moved again, like a breath at her neck, and a whisper followed. Don't lock me in again. The door slammed shut. The lights flickered off. Teachers found her hours later sitting in the middle of the floor, eyes open, staring blankly at the wall. The chalkboard behind her now read, "Two forgot her. One remains." They closed the school for renovations the next week. But every night, neighbors say, a faint light still flickers from room 3B. And if you listen closely from the street below, just past midnight, you can still hear the sound of chalk scratching against the board, slowly spelling out new names. The girl in the gym mirror. The gym at Crestwood High was the oldest part of the campus, built in 1962 and barely updated since. Its wooden floors creaked like brittle bones, and the smell of dust and old sweat never truly left. During the day, it echoed with the laughter and footsteps of students during PE, but at night, it became something else entirely. Coach Rayner was always the last to leave. Every evening, he checked the equipment, turned off the lights, and made sure the gym was empty before locking the doors. But one Tuesday in October, as a storm rolled in outside, he realized he wasn't alone. He just switched off the last light when he heard it, the rhythmic bounce of a basketball from across the gym. At first, he thought a student had snuck in again. It wouldn't be the first time. "Hey!" he called out, voice echoing through the darkness. Gyms closed. No response, just that steady thump, thump, thump. He flicked the lights back on. Nothing. The court was empty. The ball rack near the wall was full. But then, he noticed the large mirror that covered the far wall. It had been installed decades ago for dance practice, cracked in one corner but still reflecting most of the gym. In that reflection, something was off. A ball was rolling slowly across the floor behind him. But when he turned around, the floor was still. He blinked hard, looking back at the mirror. The reflection showed the ball bouncing once, twice, before rolling toward the center line and stopping. His breath caught. There was a shape standing behind it now, faint, colorless, but unmistakably a girl. She looked no older than 16, wearing what looked like an old gym uniform from the 1980s. Her hair was tied back, her eyes fixed on him through the glass. "Who are you?" he whispered. She didn't move. Instead, her reflection tilted its head slowly, like she was studying him, and then, without sound, mouthed 3 words. "You killed me." Coach Rayner staggered back, shaking his head. No, this isn't real." The lights flickered violently, and the mirror surface rippled, as if made of water, distorting her shape. The sound of squeaking shoes and a basketball bouncing grew louder, surrounding him. He turned in circles, but the court was empty. Only the mirror showed the truth. The girl now walking closer, her reflection moving forward while her body, on his side, remained absent. The ball hit the mirror with a loud crack, and a spiderweb of fractures spread across the glass. Then silence. When he finally dared to look again, the reflection of the gym was empty, except for one thing written backward across the floorboards. "Practice ends at 9. The next morning, students found the coach sitting in the bleachers, staring blankly at the cracked mirror. He didn't answer when they spoke to him, just muttered, "She was right there." The principal wrote it off as stress and ordered the mirror to be removed immediately. But when the custodians tried to take it down, they froze. Behind the glass, not reflected, but inside it, was a faint outline of a face, pressed against the surface. Eyes open, mouth wide, like she'd been screaming for years. The glass was cold to the touch, colder than ice, and no amount of heating or wiping could remove the imprint. A few days later, one of the students, a shy girl named Lila, stayed after school to practice gymnastics. The storm outside had returned, and thunder rolled through the sky as she adjusted the vaulting mat. The mirror had been covered with a tarp, but part of it had slipped off. When lightning flashed, it illuminated something behind the tarp, a silhouette standing perfectly still. Thinking it was her reflection, Lila waved awkwardly. The figure waved back, but slightly slower. Offbeat. She frowned, stepping closer, and whispered, "Hello!" The tarp suddenly dropped to the floor. The girl in the reflection wasn't her anymore. Same height, same uniform, but pale, soaked, and smiling too wide. Her eyes were pools of black, Lila froze as the reflection raised a hand and pressed it against the glass. The temperature in the gym plummeted. Her own reflection vanished entirely, replaced by the dead girl's grin. The surface of the mirror bulged outward, as if something inside was trying to escape. Lila screamed and bolted for the door, but when she looked back, she saw herself in the mirror again. Only this time, the reflection didn't run. It stayed behind, staring back at her with a terrified expression, pounding on the glass from the inside. They found Lila's phone near the door the next morning. The last video she recorded showed the mirror shaking violently, the reflection screaming soundlessly, and Coach Rayner's voice whispering faintly, "Practice ends at 9. The mirror was removed from the gym that week, but it never made it to the storage facility. Somewhere on the delivery route, the truck driver vanished, along with the mirror. Nobody knows where it went. But sometimes, if you drive past Crestwood High late at night and look at the gym windows, you can still see a girl standing just behind the glass, waiting for practice to end. The science lab incident. Every school has that one room students whisper about. Not because it's haunted, but because something wrong happened there. At Crestfield Academy, that room was the old science lab in the East Wing. Nobody used it anymore, not since the accident. They said a student, Marcus Hale, died during a chemistry experiment gone wrong 15 years ago. The gas fire had ignited unexpectedly, filling the room with smoke before anyone could react. When firefighters broke in, they found Marcus collapsed beside the sink. Eyes open, face untouched by the flames, but lungs completely scorched from the inside out. The school quietly sealed the room and moved the science classes elsewhere. But during exam week, the power went out in the main building, and one teacher, Ms. Caldwell, decided to use the old lab to store equipment temporarily. She didn't believe in the stories. "It's just an empty room," she told the students. "Ghosts don't exist." She should have listened. It started with the smell, the faint, metallic scent of burnt air. Then came the flickering lights. She thought it was just old wiring, until she noticed something strange. The emergency eye wash station had started dripping water, even though it wasn't connected to the pipes anymore. The puddle on the floor formed slowly, then began to ripple, as if something underneath was breathing. Miss Caldwell crouched down, staring into it. That's when she saw the reflection. Not hers, but a boy standing behind her, his face pale, his lab coat charred black around the edges. His lips were cracked, and when they moved, no sound came out, just the faint hiss of escaping air. She spun around, nothing. Empty room. But on the counter, written in ash, were the words, "Don't light the flame." Heart pounding, she grabbed her things and reached for the switch. But before she could leave, a faint click echoed through the lab, the sound of a gas valve turning open. She froze. The air grew thick, heavy with the smell of propane. The single overhead bulb flickered twice, then steadied. And from the back of the room, near the old Bunsen burners, a shadow stood upright, shaped like a student, motionless, head slightly tilted. Then came the whisper, dry and rasping like air through cracked glass. "It burns, again." The next morning, the janitor found Miss Caldwell's car still in the parking lot, keys inside. They searched for her all day before deciding to check the East Wing. The police broke the lab door open, finding it sealed from the inside. The scene was almost identical to the one from 15 years ago. The same burn marks along the floor, the same smell of gas. But this time, the fire hadn't reached the walls. The Bunsen burner sat cold and unlit, yet the air reeked of smoke. And on the black countertop, drawn in soot, were two sets of fingerprints, one adult-sized, one smaller. In the school security footage, recorded on an old analog camera still wired in that hallway, investigators found something chilling. At exactly 11:13 p.m., Miss Caldwell walked into the lab carrying a box. 3 minutes later, a faint flicker of orange light appeared under the door, then vanished. The door never opened again. But at 11:27, the camera caught a faint silhouette in the window. Not Miss Caldwell's shape, but someone shorter, thinner, wearing what looked like a burnt school uniform. After that night, the gas lines in the entire East Wing were permanently shut off. But students who sneak near the lab during detention say that if you put your ear to the door, you can still hear a faint clicking sound, like someone turning a gas valve on and off over and over again. And if you wait long enough, the smell of burning air fills your nose, followed by a whisper behind your ear saying, "You lit it." The school tried covering the windows, sealing the vents, even plastering over the lab's entrance. None of it worked. Every few months, the markings reappear on the wall. Don't light the flame. No one speaks Marcus Hale's name anymore. But every October, during exam week, the same time he died, the fire alarms in the East Wing go off at exactly 11:13 p.m. Even when the system is unplugged, the teachers call it a glitch. The students call it a warning. And late at night, when the storm winds pass through the broken vents, the smell of smoke still lingers. Sharp, metallic, and unmistakable. The science lab breathes again, waiting for the next spark. 3 schools, 3 forgotten tragedies. And yet, every night, their stories continue. Maybe your old school has its own secrets too. Doors that never open. Rooms they say were sealed for a reason, but some lessons never end. That on-screen text appears in eerie white font. Subscribe before the next bell rings.